Hi, this is Jess with the Work-Life Balance podcast, and we are on episode 11. And this week I have brought on a lovely guest called Karen Leigh, and I'm going to let her introduce herself and what she does.
Hi, yes, thank you so much for allowing me to come on your podcast. I know this is the first time you've had a guest, so it's a pleasure to be that first guest and be able to share some of my own experiences of work-life balance as well. But yeah, I'm an NLP coach and hypnotherapist, and NLP is a way of changing people's perspective or understanding other people's perception of the world, and acknowledging and establishing any beliefs, habits, thoughts that they have that are not serving them well. How can we remove them and reprogram the mind with habits and thoughts and beliefs that are going to serve us and empower us? That's essentially what I do as an NLP coach.
And how did you get into that? Because it sounds really exciting.
It is. So I was already on a personal development journey for a long time. So my children are 10 and 11. And I had studied business at university, and I just realised that I've probably gone back 5 years now. I did not want to work in the corporate world. It just wasn't filling me up. So during 2020, I had already been in this, reading all the personal development books and trying to better myself and get to a good place mentally, physically, spiritually. And I hired a life coach in 2021 at the start of the year. And yeah, she just allowed me to have all these breakthroughs, because I think we can do all the work ourselves, all years and years of personal development work. And sometimes it does take someone else to just help pull the magic out of you, which is what she did. It allowed me to have breakthroughs and notice patterns in my life. And I just came out the other side a brand new person with a fresh perspective. I believed in myself. I had my self-worth back. And I thought, why did more people not know about this? We're not taught this in school. And I feel like there's a bit of an injustice there, that we're not taught our own power, and that you can, self-belief, is a big thing. We should all have self-belief that we can go after the things in career, lifestyle. So that's, and then I did my training in NLP.
It's funny how you said that. We're not taught this in school. And I do think that actually, in general, alternative therapies, such as what you offer and other things like Reiki and other things like that, they're not widely sort of discussed when you're sort of in school or when you go to sort of doctors and things. Do you think that's something that could be done better?
Yeah, I think it's almost new. I feel the past 10 years, but especially the past 3-4 years, they're becoming more and more common, which is good, because then, us, even as parents, can pass that down to our children, and hopefully generations can start to carry that and start turning to alternative methods. I think whatever works for you, but it's good to have all of these options as well, and holistic options. So yeah, sorry, was your question about school? I think it was just, I think we just didn't know. We just didn't know back then. I don't know if they ever will teach these things in school.
Push it out a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to universities and college and spoken to the students about limiting beliefs and just trying to help them understand, talking about that, the negative self-talk that creeps in, that tells you can't do it, or you're not good enough, or you're not clever enough. I know that as students, half of them aren't interested, and they're probably thinking, what is she talking about? But if it might help them later. If anything that I see
definitely
can help them when they're sitting in an exam and remember, oh, she said that, then I hope that's why I do it. Try and get them when they're at that stage, when they're at university and they're studying, because that's a really stressful time. So many people suffering with anxiety we see now.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. But I also think that, like, I've been to doctors and things, and they always offer quite traditional forms of coaching or therapy, but I've never heard any of these other alternative remedies discussed. So I would it would be really nice to have that conversation and go to a GP who says, actually, these are all the other forms of, therapy, especially sort of talking therapies that are on offer. So it's nice to actually speak about some of these things that you do as well. And so in addition to NLP and timeline coach. Is it called coaching or therapy? Is
Timeline therapy. It comes from
therapy.
yeah.
In addition to timeline therapy, you also do hypnotherapy. Is that correct?
Okay.
And you do past life regression. So maybe you can talk to us a bit about that, because they both sound really interesting and probably not as widely heard of either.
So timeline therapy, yep, I hadn't heard of timeline therapy until I did my training in NLP, and it was just part of the training because it derives from NLP. And the purpose of timeline therapy is to get to the root of emotions like anger, sadness, fear, hurt, guilt. That those are the 5 emotions we work through. And it's different from your typical therapy where you would sit and you would talk about whatever traumatic experience or whatever it is that you're going to therapy for. So in NLP, we don't really believe in that, because when you're talking about traumatic times or terrible experiences, you're reliving it. Your body's going, that mind-body connection where your body's going back into that state and you feel all those horrible feelings. And the NLP world, I guess you would say we don't feel the need to relive it. You can get to the root of the anger, the sadness, the fear, the guilt without reliving it. And we do it in a disassociated way so that you can acknowledge it, take the learnings from it and move on. We can instill new empowering beliefs that will help you manage those emotions more productively.
And so also, because I've seen on your website, past life regression. Please tell me more about that, because that sounds really, really interesting as well. Because my first thought was, have I been reincarnated? And is this what I'm going to learn about myself? So maybe you could tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And so my work, I mean, even with timeline therapy, we take into consideration everyone's beliefs, because we all have, some are atheists, some do believe we have past lives. So we take all of that into consideration. We don't tell you what to believe. We just assume that whatever you believe, we take that into consideration. But with past life regression, that was my choice because it's something that always fascinates me. That's a training that I did separately. And it is just a form of hypnotherapy. So I work with people with hypnotherapy around, anxiety or maybe weight loss, healthy eating habits, that type of thing. But I wanted to offer something purely because it interests me. And a lot of the people in my community, we turn to, you mentioned Reiki, sound healing, that type of thing, alternative healing modalities. So I knew they'd be interested in past life regression and I wanted to offer it. So basically it's hypnotherapy. The first half, we just get you into that relaxed meditative state, in a trance-like state. And then we do the past life regression part where we'll just take you back. We never know what's going to come up. Sometimes people go off on adventures and it's very colour. They see they're in a different dimension, or it could be they're back 500 years ago. So personally, I believe that whatever comes up, there's a message there. It could be that your subconscious mind just wants to give you a metaphor to tell, because there's learnings to be taken that you can use in your lifetime. Who knows? But they certainly get. It's fascinating, but
it is. Yeah.
I will pull as many learnings that we can take from a session that will help them going forward. So.
No, that it all sounds interesting, from the NLP to the timeline therapy to the past life regression. It's just opened up a whole new avenue of sort of alternative therapies that I never knew existed before. But what I also wanted to ask, because obviously my podcast is called Work-Life Balance, and it sounds like you have, improved your work-life balance by undertaking this sort of course and this role within sort of therapy. How do you feel your work-life balance has changed since you've left sort of corporate business work to do NLP and timeline therapy?
Mm-hmm. I mean, when my children were toddlers, so I had a 2 and 3 year old, and I was at university and working 2 jobs. So our life was manic. It was, and a single mum too. So I was juggling a lot. And I mean, kind of enjoyed it. I loved our life back then. It was, crazy, but delightful, tiring. But then I did come to a point, I hit a brick wall, something had to give. So it turned out to be just one of my jobs had to go. And I just had to juggle student life, mama life, and working one job. And that was fine. And then obviously 2020 hit and my life took a completely different turn career-wise. And I was still working in corporate, but after about 6 months I went part-time to start my own business. And then after 6 months, I thought, I'm just going to leave the corporate world completely, leave my safety net and just do this thing that I love to do. And I just put my everything into my business, into my work, doing the hypnotherapy and NLP, which also gave me the time with my kids. And that felt really precious to me at that point, because it meant I could just have, the holidays with them. I homeschool now. I wasn't at the time. But so it was just nice. It was just lovely. It just meant I could pick my kids up from school. They didn't have to go to, the after school clubs and things. So yeah, it's completely different now, my work-life balance, and for the better, because my nervous system is a lot calmer. Also because I'm doing what I love. But yeah, I mean, it has its challenges, homeschooling, trying to run a business, life's very different and it has its challenges, but it's my choice. I chose this, and that's, I guess that's a good feeling too.
No, that's amazing. And I was going to say, there might be a lot of, because I personally have met a mum literally the other day, just as I was sort of arranging to have a chat with you, who wanted to do something alternative therapy based and wasn't sure how to sort of get into that. Is there any advice you would give to other mums or parents who kind of want to slide away from that corporate world? And because a lot might be nervous because of a cost of living crisis and money and everything. Did you do any sort of planning or anything that you thought might be helpful for someone else who wants to do that but is maybe a little bit nervous to get into it?
There's a lot of work. I mean, there's a lot of work. I actually talk a lot about fear, because that's the thing that does hold us back, from stepping out of our comfort zone. There's so much I could say around that. So firstly, you'd said about, if they want to do alternative therapies and maybe don't know what to do. I mean, I would say definitely I went down the route of focusing on limiting beliefs and getting out of your comfort zone and the fear around that, because that was my journey. So, if someone wants to go into the holistic therapies, whatever worked for them, I would say use that. That's your superpower because you've got the experience, and that's what you can help other people with. And it's the self-belief, and it doesn't happen overnight. You do need to do the work around that. NLP is amazing because it's fast acting. So to give you an example, if you know who Tony Robbins is, he's probably the most well-known.
I haven't heard of him, but I'd love to know a little bit more. Yeah.
You would probably recognise him if you saw him. So he's a sort of motivational speaker. He's NLP trained. And he, I think there's something on Netflix too. You can see him on YouTube as well. If you watch him, he'll pick someone from the audience who's maybe a bit, they're looking down, their body language is a bit, you can tell they're just not in a good place. And, within 30 seconds, he's completely changed their physiology, they're happier. You can see it in their eyes. Their whole physiology has changed. They've got a different perspective. And that's not woo-woo. That's just because it's mind-body connection, but it's because we do hold the power ourselves. You were talking about, doctors and, why do they not? Because it's not always scientifically backed.
Yeah.
Probably why they don't. For anyone who is skeptical on this, there's Dr. Joe Dispenza, he's a scientist, and he has a great book called You Are the Placebo. So for anyone who isn't so much convinced or sways on the side of, no, I need more proof, I would look into him or that audiobook or book, because he's a scientist. He's not just talking about, you have the power and, your mind, you can do anything. He gives the scientific background of why that is true. So I would go and look into that.
So that actually leads nicely into my next question, which you may have already answered. But what is the biggest misconception about what you do with your NLP and your timeline therapy and the other therapies that you offer? I know because I'm now having quite a few friends going into alternative therapies, particularly someone I'm quite close to. They're quite worried because they're thinking, oh, people might judge me and think I'm a little bit sort of airy-fairy and a bit kooky. Um, have you had sort of similar experiences or other misconceptions that have been sort of fired at you about the work that you do?
Can I just say that's so common when anyone decides to go from one career into something new or to try something new, and that is something that's so common that I had to navigate, and my clients as well, because they think, what are people, who is this new me? You know, how are they going to understand? Are they going to judge me? So that is really common. But the biggest misconception, I think the biggest misconception is that's woo-woo, because we're not, for decades now, centuries now, we haven't been taught about that, the holistic side, and it's new. So I guess anything unknown, people kind of dismiss. So I think that's a misconception. It's just woo-woo. It doesn't, because people honestly, it goes back to that we're not taught that we actually can take back our power, take back control of our mind. We can instill self-belief and empowering beliefs, but we're not taught that at school, so we kind of dismiss that.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, when I think of this, because obviously I've been a nurse before, I actually think that we don't focus enough on the mind, and that we need to look after our mind. And I think stress has a massive factor on other physiological changes. And that's why I think some of these therapies that are starting to become more popular, like what you're doing and so many other people want to go into, are really important, because I've seen the effect that, all these negative emotions can have on you, and not just, in the psychological manner in speaking, but they can have actual physical effects on you that lead to sort of quite severe illnesses, I think. And although I just think it's probably very under researched, and it's something that, it would be really cool to see some research papers on NLP and the effect it's had on people. Is there much research out there being done into how these therapies are affecting people, both psychologically and physically, if that makes sense?
So there will be, but I don't know if they're easily accessible, because they're not. I mean, because it also does it. If people, it's going to take away from our traditional therapies, isn't it? NLP and even, hypnotherapy and, all these other healing modalities, they are pretty powerful, and it'll be interesting to see with more and more people now turning to them. I think that speaks volumes in itself. So I remember during my training, someone asking the same question, and that was sort of there's not, if you look it up, there's a lot of criticism. Again, I don't know if it's just people don't understand it, but it's not, there is no scientific backing for neuro linguistic programming, and I personally would say it's because it's pretty powerful. Maybe, I don't know, is it a threat? I don't know, but for anyone that does want to, I would say go and check out You're the Placebo. It's a long book, but a really great book, and that's written by a scientist, so that would be your best bet.
I have to say that's a really solid suggestion, but it is so unfortunate that there isn't sort of, I think people feel secure in the research. That's the thing. And we've probably spent centuries, thinking what all these things are like, witchcraft and things like that. And then we turned into the sort of 21st century, and we got such a huge emphasis on what we can actually prove in front of us. But sometimes you don't always need that sort of really physical research proof to know that something's helping you. And I suppose it is a very individual thing. And if you're feeling better in yourself because of it, then obviously it is having a positive impact on you. So I wanted to ask you, what do you enjoy most about your role now?
I think the flexibility, being able to pick my own hours and have this time with my children as well. If I was still working in corporate, I wouldn't have that. I would either be in an office or sitting at my laptop, 9 to 5, and missing the day with them. So I think definitely the flexibility and the location freedom. As you know, I'm in Texas at the moment, so I sold up and just decided to come here, and I would never have been able to do that before. So creating your reality, I suppose that's the best thing about it.
And do you find there's a really good community, whether it's sort of remotely or where you are physically, for the NLP community? And are they, how did you get into that community? Do you go to groups, or do you are you with a sort of, association? How does that work?
So, online's amazing. So yeah, I've connected with people online, but I also go to a lot of events just for personal reasons. Not, I go to sort of small business events as well, because that's lovely to connect with other people who are maybe mums, or maybe not even mums, but juggling, running their own business. So they're great as well. And then people, if people like the work that you do, they'll recommend you. So it's networking. So those things are great for anyone who wants to start their own business. But yeah, I go to women's circles and like sound healing, that type of thing. So I meet people who are interested in the work that I do. They want to turn to alternative methods. And I just put myself out there. Yeah, I just put myself out there. And if people like what I do.
That's really lovely to hear. And it sounds like you're having, a huge impact on wherever you're going. And the next question I wanted to ask is, did you have any particular motivation to go into your current career? I know you spoke a bit about having a better work-life balance, but has an alternative therapy career always been sort of circling at the back of your mind, or?
It wasn't until it was really when I started having the breakthroughs after having my own coach. I didn't want to be, just a sort of general life coach. I wanted to do something specific, and I really feel like NLP found me, because I didn't really know what it was. It just so happened that I was looking at different therapies or hypnotherapy, and I found NLP, or it found me. And I had to go through every technique, everything, timeline therapy. I had to have that done to me in order to be trained, and it helped me massively. I think that's why, within a week of finishing up my training, I had started on my own and had my first client, because I just had so much self-belief in myself. But yeah, the reason why I did choose to go down that route was, honestly, I think there was just a bit of injustice there. I just thought, it's not fair. It's not fair that there's so many unfulfilled adults, or unhappy, and just so we're not content as adults, because we're a bit lost, because I was, and I know that many of my friends and people that I speak to, and I think that's really unfair, which is why I thought, why is this not taught in schools? And which is why I wanted to go and speak to universities and students as well. But yeah, I guess that is what sort of prompted me to go and do my bit. If I can just make a tiny bit of an impact, then.
No, that's really nice. And you talk about how people are feeling unfulfilled. I've seen it hugely, much, much more these days. Like, everyone seems really, really unfulfilled. And a lot of people are trying to leave, the similar lifestyles that were corporate and just too much at the moment. So it sounds like a much nicer area and place to be in. The next thing I wanted to ask was, can you tell me about like one of your biggest successes? Like, obviously, without going into too much depth about your clients, did you have a particular person that you felt you helped a lot and came out the other side? If there's something that you can speak about.
I don't know if I honestly can say one specific, because everyone comes to me for a different reason.
Yeah.
It might be trauma. So someone just feeling, look, I've got all, it's like stagnant emotions is what they described, and I don't know what to do with this. And we did timeline therapy, and it was actually 6 months later, they got back in touch and said that they'd had the biggest breakthrough. And it was like, they told, there was a lot more to it than that, but yeah, they basically, they'd let go. They had been carrying this for 30 years, and it was gone. And that was lovely to hear. That wasn't me, that was them. I'm the guide. I give them the skill set and the tools, and guide them through timeline therapy, but they're doing the work. So yeah, that was I'll never forget that one. That was lovely to see. But even just people having, people come to me because they have blocks around their business. If I had someone, again, it was timeline therapy they wanted. And it was just because she didn't really have a lot of self-belief. It turned, when you really dig deep and unravel, it can come down to low self-worth, because if we have low self-worth, it's going to have a knock-on effect on every part of your life, including your business. And when we did timeline therapy, she went away and put her prices up in her business and confidently shouted about, these are my prices. And because she knew, that she'd put in all the training, she'd done all the training for it. She was very much entitled to be charging what she was. So that was lovely to see as well. Just someone, completely changing and having the confidence and self-belief in themselves. So yeah,
and often that's often what people need, is just, someone to guide them through that process. The next thing I was going to ask was, where do you see sort of your career going, or how you see yourself developing within your own career? Is there some other things you want to learn, or you just want to get really good at what you're doing and make sure that you're helping as many people as possible?
So yeah, I think now that I've done my NLP, I did my hypnotherapy as well. So I think I'm fine in that regards, because I do, like you say, I just want to be the best I can at both of those. I did, when I was in Scotland, I did run women's circles, so like little sort of meditation classes, and I missed that. That was lovely. I would definitely do that again at some point. I run retreats as well, which I'd love to go back and do. I definitely will. But no, apart from that, I just want to keep doing my NLP and just getting the message out there as much as I can, and just keep hopefully having a good impact on people's lives. More public speaking, more speaking at universities, and then writing a book. That's definitely on the list.
Oh, that sounds exciting, writing a book. That's such a big endeavour. No, that sounds really, really, really good. You'll have to keep us posted. I was sort of, to round things up, I just wanted to talk a bit about your podcast, because you also have a podcast as well. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that. And also, for anyone who's listening and is really interested, how we can find you and your details if people are interested in doing some NLP or want to get in touch about some more things that you do.
Yep. So my podcast is a Spirit, Mind and Soul podcast, and I have guests on. It's every second Sunday, and it tends to be people who offer alternative healing services. There's lots of information there. Everyone has their own story. They're talking about how they overcame their hardships and challenges in life, and then got to a place where they're now thriving, whether it's spiritually, in life, business, and they share the mindset tips and tools that help them. So really the purpose is to give people hope, to show different people's lives, because if you can relate to one of them and see, well, they got through it, so I can overcome that too. That was the purpose of the podcast.
And I've listened to some of your episodes, and they are really, really interesting. So your guests are such amazing people that, you can't believe they've been through this and managed to come out the other side. You've got a website and some details. I will also put all the details in the description of this episode. But what's the best way to contact you, or where to go to find out a bit more about what you're doing in sort of a readable version?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, my website's IamKarenLeigh.com. I'm very active on Instagram, which is I am Karen Leigh. And if anyone wants to go to my website, there's a free ebook. It's not a big read, it's quite small. But it kind of delves into the subjects that I work with clients, like limiting beliefs, how to overcome them, inner child work, self-love, finding your inner happiness, just some small chapters, but I think people will get a lot, so they can go and download that for free if they wish.
Excellent. Well, I've been really privileged to have you as my first guest on my podcast. So thank you for coming on, Karen. And it's been such an amazing discussion. I'm really sort of excited to hopefully hear some more of your episodes and hear some of your guests. And thank you for coming to chat with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to see your other guests too and see where this podcast goes.
Thank you.